Don't you know I'm pumped up my kicks, ho? Night City, though. You know I'm at bad, baby. She don't got no concert, though. In the love of clubbing, baby. That's just how it goes, though. I don't need a sofa. Somebody I used to know. Video game half mask. She just want the black flag. I just gotta sweat her. That just be the weather. Skinny lover, baby. She a blondie. That's just new slang for them tightrope mommies. Yeah, that's right. Don't mess it up. That's the move, girl. Don't mess it up. That's my groove, girl. The less I know, the better. Baby girl, I rip high. When I start sleeping on the floor, when I get hot. 10,000 opioids, 10,000 in a row. What, baby, what you want? Money and the chemicals, electric love.
Hello, hey, it's Willy P 417, your favorite YouTuber, reactor YouTuber, right? All right, no, but I mean, no, that is true too, but um, I think first order of business, um, well, hold up here, I think, oh, okay, so it should be right now. All right, so I got another one for you guys. This is Willy P Reacts. I hope you guys enjoy it. Um, This is called Inside the Room for Firing Squad Execution. What happens in the death chamber? Bam. And this is Brian Ent- Enton and Enton. I don't know. He'll probably say his name. So, but definitely subscribe. Definitely go watch his video. Let's go ahead and get right into this thing.
Really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. In this episode, talking about something that's kind of difficult to talk about, but it's real in America, the firing squad. It is a means of execution in several states across the country, and there was just a firing squad execution that just happened days ago. I'm going to interview in this episode someone who was actually in the room when the
That's
execution
super cool.
happened. What was it like? Is it humane? What states are doing this? I'm getting into all of it in this episode of Brian Ensign. So on Friday, South Carolina carried out the execution of a death row inmate. And that is not entirely unique. It is the fifth time a prisoner convicted of murder has been put to death in South Carolina this year. South Carolina is one of 27 states in the U.S. with the death penalty, although four of them, including California and Pennsylvania, they've put executions on hold for the time being. Overall, there have been 43 prisoner executions.
It makes it like, when you really think about it, it's like mind blowing to think um how much death happens in the prisons besides just people stabbing each other and that stuff, but then all the criminals being put to death. I mean, it's a dangerous world out there. No, for real though, it really is, and that's, I mean, I don't know. I always think of the movie Green Mile, but then I also think about it and I'm like, I've seen like documentaries where it's like actually serious criminals that are, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's probably been at least one time that they've messed up and put somebody to death that wasn't supposed to be put to death in all the times of the world, you know? But um I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird thought. But they're doing the firing squad, and like a lot of prisoners are saying um it's a lot better than doing lethal injection or I don't remember what the other one was. Lethal injection, electric chair. If you and the electric chair sounds like no fun. Ugh.
Since 2025. But Fridays in South Carolina is different, and that's really what I'm going to get into in this episode. It was carried out with a firing squad. Yes, a firing squad. When you hear firing squad, you might be thinking of something from way in the past, but they are using the firing squad. And it's actually the third time South Carolina has used the controversial and more violent method this year. Four other states also have a firing squad, but South Carolina is the first to use it in 15 years. And more could be coming across the country's death penalty states, which is another reason I wanted to do this episode. I'm going to be speaking again with Ted Clifford. He's a reporter who witnessed Friday's firing squad execution of 44-year-old Stephen Bryant, who was convicted of killing three people.
Dude, and I heard like when they do the firing squad situation, man, I heard that they do I think it's like three people aimed at your heart Like they all shoot at your heart at the same time. But I guess there was this one case where somebody missed. So maybe they'll talk. I don't know.
over
Let's
5
get into
days
this.
in 2004. Really just barbaric murders. In one of the murders, Bryant taunted police by writing "Catch me if you can" in blood on the wall of the home where one of the victims lived. So after the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled against Bryant's final appeals, he was put to death Friday evening. It was just after 6 o'clock. And again, you're going to hear from someone in the room and really going to explain to us everything that happened in detail in a minute. But first, I want to give you a few more details.
I'm pretty sure it probably blew his stuff the other direction.
The state's firing squad procedure calls for strapping down the condemned inmate wearing a black prison jumpsuit to a metal chair in the corner of the execution chamber. There's a black hood that's placed over the prisoner's head, and there's a white target with a red bullseye placed on the prisoner's chest. A mere 15 feet away, about the length of an average car, 3 prison volunteers with rifles stand behind a wall. There's like a rectangular opening in the wall. And with no countdown or really any warning, the rifles fire in unison. And in this year's firing squad executions, the target was literally blown to pieces. In South Carolina, prisoners handed a death warrant are given the choice between 3 methods of execution. There's lethal injection, there's the electric chair, which I think we've all heard of. I remember growing up in Florida, I always hear about the electric chair. And then there is this other method, the firing squad.
So I was right. All 3 of the ones I just said a second ago. So.
Like 2 inmates in the state before him this year, Bryant chose to be shot to death. He chose the firing squad. The South Carolina Department of Corrections previously used the firing squad to put 2 convicted killers to death. 67-year-old Brad Sigmund, that was back in March, and 42-year-old McCall Mahdi, that was in April.
Now, you see just an innocent person there, and you probably would keep it at that, just seeing someone's picture and then knowing that they were put to death, in prison. But I don't know. Sometimes if you look at some of the case law and some of like the stuff that some of these people did, like that came out, dude, it's crazy.
Mahdi's attorneys have alleged his execution was botched. And this is pretty crazy. After an autopsy revealed that he had 2 wounds in his chest from 3 shooters, and the bullets largely missed his heart, which was the intended target. For them, it raised questions about whether their client suffered cruel and unusual punishment, as he reportedly suffered in severe pain for additional time before he was pronounced dead. The 8th Amendment of the U.S.
There shouldn't be like you get a special card because you're the one who got yourself put to death, dude. If
Constitution bars punishments deemed cruel.
It's like the same thing with like the electric chair, or with when they give you poison in your arm. Like if you don't die, they're gonna keep trying to inject you until you die, or they're gonna keep trying to shock you until you die. Like they don't care how cruel it seems or whatever, because whatever punishment you did is what got you to where you're at. So real life, man, more of a reason not to do bad shit.
And unusual, but the U.S. Supreme Court has never before prohibited a specific means of execution, including a firing squad. It's interesting because death penalty proponents, as well as some capital punishment experts, and there's historians who have said this too, they've called the firing squad actually more humane than other methods, including lethal injection. A firing squad is quicker, the experts say. It's more precise and less prone to botches than using deadly chemicals injected into the body. That is what some of these experts and historians have argued. In 2023, Idaho restored a firing squad as a backup execution method to lethal injection, despite it having never been used in state history. The other states with the firing squad, they're Utah, Mississippi, and Oklahoma also has the firing squad method. Now, Utah was the last state before South Carolina to use a firing squad to execute a prisoner. That was back in
Oklahoma. Ooh.
In 2010, the state also allows the condemned inmate to choose the method. Ronnie Lee Gardner, who had shot and killed a bartender during a robbery and then shot and killed another man while trying to escape during trial proceedings, he chose the firing squad. He was 49 years old when he was put to death. And since then, Gardner's brother has become an outspoken national advocate against the use of firing squad in executions. He has called the method barbaric. Earlier this year, Utah also pursued a firing squad execution, but the state Supreme Court put that on hold in December after the prisoner, a 67-year-old man who was found to have dementia. The inmate is named Ralph Menzies. He's Utah's longest-serving death row prisoner after he was convicted for killing a mother of 40 years ago. That's when he was 27. So besides South Carolina and Utah, firing squad executions, they could actually be on the rise nationwide. This year, Idaho made the method its leading way to execute prisoners going forward. And that decision by state lawmakers, and it was also signed off by the governor, it came after the state prison system failed to put its longest-serving death row inmate to death during a failed lethal injection in February 2024. And this is like really, just the details of this are awful. The inmate, his name is Thomas Creech, 73 years old at the time. He survived attempts by Idaho's execution team to insert an IV line at 8 different points of his body over nearly an hour. And at that point, prison leadership, they just called it off, what would have been the state's first execution in almost a dozen years. Attorneys for Creech, who is now 75 years old, after serving more than a half century in prison, they have argued that another attempt on his life would represent cruel and unusual punishment. And so far, those legal arguments have failed with the Idaho State Supreme Court and also with the federal court system. His case right now remains on appeal, but it was definitely a botched attempt with legal injection. But Idaho, which also counts Chad Daybell on its death row, not Bryce Lloyd Battle, obviously, which I covered her trial,
That's the only shitty part about all those, is that like the off chance that someone does live. But like I mean I just said it just a minute ago, if you did the crime then you gotta do the time. And if your punishment was death, man, then you don't die that first time. Then we bring your ass back down to the chopping block.
Holt mom who killed her kids, or Brian Kohlberger. Obviously, he took the plea deal. He's not
That's
going to go
real
to
life.
death. But Idaho is currently renovating its execution chamber. They're working to make a way for this firing squad by the time the law takes effect, and it looks like that will be around July of 2026. Lethal injection will remain the state's backup execution method, and then the main method will become firing squad, similar to what we saw in South Carolina. Although in South Carolina, they do have the option. In Idaho, firing squad will just be the main option. When Idaho's law goes into effect, it will become the only U.S. state where firing squad is the primary execution method. The state's prison system there has yet to release any details about its procedures or what its new death chamber may actually look like. So that's still unclear, but it could actually be very similar to what we have seen in South Carolina. I'm joined by Ted Clifford, who's from the state newspaper in South Carolina, and he was actually at this latest execution, this latest firing squad execution. Ted, thanks for talking with me. When we're talking, actually, you were at the execution last night. So I just wanted to start by asking you, like, how did this come about where you were, I guess, asked if you wanted to attend this?
Yeah, South Carolina law permits 3 media representatives at each execution. A representative from the Bell Wire Service, which here is the Associated Press, a broadcaster, and a print publication. The South Carolina Press Association essentially runs a lottery system, more or less. There's some precedence or priority, I should say, given to local publications. Outside of that, it's more or less luck of the draw, if you want to call it that. I submitted my name. It's, the South Carolina death penalty system is incredibly closed to the public. It's very secretive. There are very few ways to get information about the system. Most parts of it are exempt from freedom of information requests or open records. So it's really the only way for journalists to get to see what is going on and understand what is actually happening in the death penalty process. So I ended up submitting my name. I've been covering the death penalty for about a year. I've covered, this is the 7th execution I've covered, but it's the first one that I've actually witnessed.
And so when did you find out? Did you just get like an email, like you're on the list, or how did you find out?
Yeah, pretty much. I got an email. I want to say about 3 weeks ago from one of the directors of the Press Association saying that my name had been chosen, and then you kind of wait to see what the execution method is going to be. Again, state laws, it's somewhat unusual in South Carolina. They require the inmate to choose what the method of execution is going to be, and then to give credit to the Department of Corrections, they really do try to work with reporters to walk them through the process and make it fairly seamless and give them a heads up about what they're going to see. But at the same time, they are very, very serious about security and controlling the room and controlling the procedure. So you're really kind of following along. You're really on a pretty narrow guardrails the entire time.
That's like super sketchy. They're like, you get lippy. Well, hey, you want to come and sit in this chair next, big boy? All right.
Did you have any reservations? Were you nervous at all?
Absolutely. I've given it a lot of thought. I think starting about a year ago.
I mean, it is really cold. I think that would, that's messed anybody up to watch people die. But no matter how the person dies,
first execution took place. Now, South Carolina had about a 13-year pause in executions, and when I realized I was going to be covering it, and I've been reporting up to them. I really gave it a lot of thought, and I think what I ultimately decided was that we're one of the few mechanisms for accountability in the system. Now, the individual on death row is allowed to have their attorney in the room. Sometimes they have family, but more often than not, there's really no one there to speak for them. There's maybe a spiritual advisor, but we're really the only people who can represent the public. And at the end of the day, this is something that our elected representatives have done. And so it felt important to be there, but absolutely. I mean, it's pretty weird to wake up thinking that you're going to go see someone die. But
dude, that's exactly what I was just thinking about in my head. I'm like, that'd be the weirdest thought process to I'm literally going to watch this dude die.
I realized you really have no idea what you're going to expect. And I kind of just tried to go into it with the mindset that I was there to do a job and there to provide the public with the best information I could, which, I think was really just a way to cope with what I knew I was going to see. It's strange. It's really strange. There's no other way around that.
So you showed up and kind of walk me through what happened. I mean, so obviously you parked your car, you have to wait. I kind of want to hear all the details of how.
Yeah. No, it's a fairly elaborate process. And we got there. We arrived at the Department of Corrections uses their recruiting center as a media staging area for all the executions. And so we arrived there maybe around 3 p.m. The execution was scheduled for 6. We hung around for about an hour and a half, and then at a certain point we were essentially led from the recruiting center out back into another building. It's after office hours at this point. Everything's completely empty, and then led into a Dodge minivan that was being driven by a regional prison director. This woman who oversees 6 different prisons was our chauffeur that night, and we essentially joined a caravan of about 6 vehicles, 2 escort vehicles.
Dude, that's nuts.
And 4 other vehicles containing other witnesses. They separate the witnesses, so they don't keep the victim's family with the defense attorney or with law enforcement. And they drove us to a training center on the campus. And to sort of set the scene for you, the South Carolina Death Chamber is at South Carolina's, I guess you call it the main prison, if you want to call it that. It's called the Broad River Correctional Institution. And it's pretty close to downtown Columbia, but it's off a main road, but it's about a mile and a half off this main road, and you pass through, what can only be described as these beautiful rolling fields and meadows. The sun was going down, geese are landing for the night, there are cows grazing, and you drive to this training center where we were taken to an office and basically to wait And I'm assuming that they were essentially waiting to make sure that the United States Supreme Court wasn't going to issue some kind of stay, that the governor wasn't going to issue clemency, which Governor Henry McMaster has never done. He's a former prosecutor. He's fairly pro death penalty. We were searched very thoroughly. Couldn't take watches. No wallet, no keys, nothing. They even gave us separate pads and pens to write with. They never tried to stop us from writing or recording anything, but they were very very serious about us. Not taking anything into the death chamber, not taking anything out. And then we get back in the car and are driven for the last.
Yeah, that's because that'll get them in trouble if y'all took pictures of that person when they died, although they are in the death chamber.
Half mile to the death chamber, which is kind of a separate facility from the main prison. And it's intimidating going in there. I mean, it's 3 rows of chain link fencing covered in razor wire. The campus, I guess if you want to call it that, is being heavily patrolled by the Department of Corrections special response team, sort of a heavily alarmed elite unit that does everything from high profile prisoner transfer to suppressing riots. And then park outside for the last little bit, and they're clear that once you step out of the car, there's no talking, and essentially nobody spoke to us from that point on. And you get out of the car and you're led into the death chamber. And I think one of the things that surprised me most is you have this yard outside the death chamber, which is this windowless, low brick building, and it's right there. I mean, the door opens, you take a right turn, a left turn, and suddenly you're in the room. There's kind of no time to process it or even really get nervous. I think like a lot of people kind of assumed it would be buried in the bottom of a building somewhere, but you don't even really have time to process it. And by I think we were there at 5:58 p.m., so 2 minutes before the execution was set to begin, and you're right there and it's happening. You're sitting in this room with glass windows with metal bars on it, and there's a curtain covering it, and you're waiting for it to open.
And it's its own building, the death chamber?
Yeah, so death row, and they their technical term for it is capital punishment facility. That is its own slightly separate building, and then the death chamber is actually sort of separate from that. It doesn't really appear to be from the outside, but if you kind of look at an aerial view, you can see that you have the actual death row, the capital punishment facility, and then there's sort of a corridor that leads to the death chamber building, which I think is a purpose-built building. I don't think anything else goes on in there. And like I said, it's this one-story windowless brick building. It's completely unassuming from the outside.
So you go in and the curtain is closed at that point?
Yeah.
And you sit down?
Yeah, there's 3 rows of chairs, just one behind the other. It's not tiered or anything. I mean, it's a small room, smaller than your average living room, I'd say. In the front row, you have the victims' families. You have a law enforcement officer who sits in the middle and kind of separates the victim's family from representatives of the, whoever's there to represent the condemned, essentially, whether that's their attorney. For instance, yesterday we had the head of the 4th Circuit Federal Public Defender's Capital Habeas Unit was there. Sometimes the condemned will have a spiritual advisor. That's not uncommon. There was not one there this time. And sometimes a member of the family, but there was no one present. So they're sitting in the front row. The press are sitting right behind them, and there's often a representative for the prosecutor in South Carolina. They're called solicitors from the solicitor's office. Sorry, there's a cat I was wondering about. But, do you want me to start that again?
No, it's fine.
Okay, yeah. It's a representative from the solicitor's office who's sitting in the end row, and I believe that was the original solicitor who tried Mr. Stephen Bryant. In the back row is another law enforcement representative and a representative, the director of communications for the Department of Corrections, who's actually she sat in, I believe, on all the executions so far. But yeah, you're all sitting in this very small room, and you're looking through, like I said, this bulletproof glass, and it's covered with these metal bars. And then at 6 p.m.
It's like really super sad that like the way they have that set up, but it's like at the same time kind of like trippy because it's almost like you're like a sideshow for your last go out for like whatever you did to get to where you're at there,
Exactly. This red brown curtain, just no warning, just slides back, and you see the room, which is it is small. And Stephen Bryant was in if we're looking at it, the far left corner of the room. He's already in position. He's strapped down. His face is exposed, but the chair that they strap him to for the firing squad, his arms are kind of sort of pinned behind him and to his side. He's got these black mittens on his hands, and they dress him in black, which is unusual. The standard Department of Corrections outfit is sort of like green scrubs, and that's normally what they wear for lethal injection. But for the firing squad, they dress them in black. He's got these black sort of plastic slippers on, black scrubs, these black mittens. And maybe the oddest thing is that his head was sort of strapped to the back. There's a big sort of sling that covers his neck and chin, holding his head in place. And so he can't move his head. And for the second that the curtain moved back, he glanced at the audience or the witnesses that were there, and then just proceeded to stare straight ahead. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't make eye contact. The band kind of distorted his features. It pushed his cheeks up. And I mean, it's odd because I've been covering his case for a while. I've seen pictures of him. I've seen new pictures of him. I've seen old pictures of him. I've seen footage, and you recognize him, but it doesn't look like the person you recognize because of the way that.
I mean, it's like dehumanizing, but I think that's like back then when they would behead people, they put bags on your head before they beheaded you, or when they hung you back then, they would, put a bag on your head before they hung you. So like, I mean, it makes sense that they have some form of like hold you there, or so that you, I mean, distort the face so that they can't really see their reaction, or yeah.
The face is sort of being distorted.
It's just like pulling it back, sort of?
Yeah, well, it's sort of pushing it up, if that makes sense. It's this wide cuff, sling, I don't know exactly what you want to call it. People try to describe it before, and it's sort of hard to get your head around. You've never seen anything like it. It's this wide sling, and it pushes the face up. So, he looks very small and kind of distorted over there in the corner of the room. And, we've had, in other cases, the condemned individuals have looked over their attorneys, looked over their family. We've even had cases where people have, mouthed things, at least in the case of the lethal injections when the head is free, or, tried to maybe give a reassuring nod. We've had other people who've sort of stared, made very intentional eye contact with every single person in the room. That's what we've heard from media reports. But yeah, Stephen Bryant he pretty much stared straight ahead, and he did not give a final statement.
And so, could he talk, or does that thing block your mouth?
It doesn't block the mouth. I imagine it'd be very hard to talk, but the Department of Corrections doesn't actually let the inmate give their final statement. It's read through their attorney usually. Maybe on one occasion it was by a spiritual advisor, but I think in every case it's been by the attorney. So, that it kind of goes to what I was saying. I mean, the South Carolina Department of Corrections, which, they develop their own policies for this. And I imagine, across states this is a tightly controlled operation, but I'd say that theirs is, especially tightly controlled. There's really no room for anyone to go off script.
And so what happened next?
Yeah, 2 Corrections Department officials came out. They announced that, the execution of Stephen Corey Bryant for the murder of Willard Tejan was about to take place. There had been no stays, and I should be clear, I mentioned this earlier, the family witnesses were the family of an individual, Willard Tejan. Stephen Bryant, he pled guilty to killing 3 people and wounding another, but he was ultimately sentenced to death just for the murder of Willard Tejan, so it was only Tejan's family in the room.
Oh, so those people were literally like, hell yeah, do it.
So at 6:01, they put the hood over.
I would
his head,
imagine
and, since the timeline's
anyways.
been
I mean, there's some people, who, like, depending on what their belief background is, some people might feel away even if they did harm their family, like, but some people also would feel like an eye for an eye, so, like, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit,
staring straight ahead, and as the hood went on, you could see him take a couple of it looked to me like quick, shallow breaths, not quite hyperventilating, but as if he was steeling himself, and then the hood went on, and it's dead silence. The Tejan family sitting ahead of us, they were all holding hands, nobody's talking, and I was staring straight at his chest, and pinned to the left side of his chest, a little off-center is a target about the size of a white Post-it note, square target with a red bullseye on the middle. And I was pretty much staring straight at that, and at about 6:02, with absolutely no warning, you hear the rifle shots, and I mean, there's nothing, people like to compare it to, it's a slamming door or something, but I mean, it just sounds like gunfire. It sounds like incredibly loud gunfire, incredibly close. They all fire at once, it's just one loud crack, and I didn't see any blood, but I saw the target just fly off his chest about halfway across the room, and it landed in the middle of the room behind the electric chair, which, I mean, the electric chair is still in the middle of the room. He's in the corner, and the electric chair's in the middle, covered with this black cloth, and, immediately on being hit, his body shuddered, and then over the next sort of 30 seconds to a minute, there appeared to maybe be some faint involuntary movement, kind of maybe looked like a few small breaths or movements of the chest, maybe a small spasm at about 30 seconds, and then just complete stillness. And, he's strapped in such a way that the body can't go limp. He can't move, but you do see kind of there's a slackness to it. I mean, the life is gone. There's no tension in the body anymore. And, you couldn't see the wound, but looking closely, you could see sort of a dark patch of wetness. Obviously, his blood slowly spreading across his chest, but you really couldn't see the blood, which is obviously the intention of using
the black garments.
Yeah, the black clothes for the firing squad. And then at about 6:04, a doctor came in. Give or take about 6:04, a doctor came in. Or we're assuming a doctor, some kind of medical professional with a stethoscope. Spent about a minute, kind of looked like he was placing the stethoscope around different parts of Stephen Bryant's chest. And then at 6:05,
he was trying to make sure that if he was really dead or not.
One of the corrections officials came back out and said that the execution had been performed, and Stephen Bryant was pronounced dead at 6:05 p.m. And then the curtains slid shut. And I mean, we were in that room for 7 minutes, start to finish. And there's really, there's no warning at any point of it. I mean, it happened incredibly quickly. Compared to lethal injection in South Carolina, the recent ones, those have been 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour, and people are waiting, obviously closely watching, see any kind of movement. But within a minute after the bullets being fired, there was nothing. There appeared to be absolutely no life.
How many people shoot?
3, and they're all armed. They're all carrying loaded rifles. And to be clear,
well, wouldn't you know?
I realized this other part of it that I didn't mention, and partly because I didn't have a very clear view of it. And it's one of the strange things about this room is oddly, because it's so small and the glass windows are these sort of separated windows, everybody has a pretty different view, actually. And the executioners fire their rifles from a slit in the far wall. If Stephen Bryant's on the left side, the gun ports are essentially they're on the right side. They're on the right wall. And there's a little black screen that covers them. So after the hood goes on, the corrections official raises, it's a little black pull screen, almost like a little projector screen, and pulls it, and it sort of pulls up, and you see the black slit in the wall. It's divided into 3 gun ports, but you don't see anybody. But again, we've been told that none of them are carrying blanks. It's 3 executioners. We've been told they're volunteers, that nobody's forced to do it, but again, we have no information about it. We know that they fire a type of bullet called I believe it's a .308 Winchester Tap Urban round, and what's specialized, I guess you could say, about this round is that it's both high penetrating, but also fragments. So it goes straight into the body and then more or less shatters, explodes outwards, pulverizing the organ. So if things go correctly and it does what it's supposed to do, it should essentially immediately shred the heart, immediately cutting off blood supply and oxygen to the brain. So in theory, more or less instantaneous death.
Yeah, I don't know why I always thought that it was like two people had blanks and one had a real bullet, and that way there was no like guilt, or you didn't have to, the person who actually did it didn't have to, they would never know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's something we've always heard about firing squads. I think there are some, historical precedents for it, whether it's everybody has blanks except for one person, or everybody is armed except for, one person has a blank so that you can spread the guilt. In South Carolina, they've been very clear that that everybody is carrying a loaded rifle, which was part of the controversy, actually, in the last execution by firing squad, where the autopsy found only 2 bullet entry wounds. And the Department of Corrections maintained, their argument is that, 2 bullets had to have entered through the same hole, which may be possible. I think it's strained a lot of people. A lot of people have not found that credible. There's certainly people talking about the last execution by firing squad, which is an individual named Mikhail Mahdi. He appeared to yell in pain on being shot. He appeared to breathe for much longer. The autopsy also subsequently found that it didn't destroy the heart. I mean, it hit the chamber. I mean, it hit the heart. It sort of clipped it, but the path of the bullets was sort of much lower in the body. They also only found really two bullet paths through the body. So that's really cast a bit of cloud of suspicion.
Imagine being put on death row and then literally it hits your shit, but does not hit your heart the way it's supposed to and explodes. So now you're just sitting there bleeding out in pain, and you didn't just die like the instant death, like,
And controversy over the firing squad here, but the Department of Corrections is sort of stuck to their position on that. Nobody has found any conclusive evidence one way or the other as to what could have happened. But yeah, if everything is going according to plan, it's 3 executioners with 3 rifles and 3 bullets.
It's interesting they do an autopsy. Like, I mean, they obviously know how.
I think that they would want to do the 3 bullets because then they know that at least out of 3 people, one of them would have hit. And I bet money that they've always said that just so that everybody that's a part of the firing squad feels better. But really, all 3 of their guns shot projectiles out, and or all the ones that have been being shot out forever. So like, it would really just depend. So
the person died, like,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of one of the strange things about this. I mean, so we're in Richland County here. The execution takes place in Richland County. I mean, there's a representative of the Richland County Coroner's Office on scene. This gets recorded as a homicide. Now, not everyone has done an autopsy. The first execution in South Carolina since the state resumed executions, which took place last September, there was an individual named Freddie Owens. His family didn't want an autopsy. He had converted to Islam while in prison and had sort of religious convictions against it. But everybody else, I think they've either requested or their families have agreed to an autopsy. But in theory, every homicide in Richland County, I think pretty much every county in the country is supposed to go to autopsy, and this is a homicide. Against the death certificate says. I mean, I think I can't remember the exact wording, but more or less state sanctioned homicide. So it's really,
and that's, like I said. I mean, honestly, if the person did the crime, then like I said, they should do the time. But I mean, then other than that, then I mean, it is fascinating though.
Yeah, it's sort of one of the strange parts about it. I mean, that it is still kind of treated as, a medico-legal death, as people say. I mean, they have a doctor on scene. They're taking his pulse. It is, and some people have, I know some in the medical profession have really kind of objected to that. But it's one of the sort of stranger parts of the system.
And I know, just lastly, like, obviously this isn't about you. You're a reporter. I'm a reporter. I get it. And, like, we have to do things and report the story. But like, when I've seen autopsy, I mean, I've obviously never seen anything like this. But when I've seen autopsy photos, it sort of has stuck with me. I mean, are you like me? You saw someone get executed. That's pretty strange.
Yeah.
Is it, like, do you feel weird?
Absolutely. You can't not. I mean, it's just completely.
Yeah, because I don't think many people witness other people dying unless you're in like war, third world countries, or like you get into a situation with other people, or you're in a gang, or okay, I guess there's a bunch of situations, but whatever.
Strange and horrible, and but it's not gruesome, and that's really by design. I think the Department of Corrections has really gone out of their way to try to control every element of this as much as they can. And there are a lot of folks out there who are anti-death penalty advocates who think that that's horrible in its own way, that we sort of intentionally sanitize this system. But I mean, the flip side of it means that when you view it, you're kind of shielded from how awful it is. So I think you end up really clinging to these details. And I know, speaking for myself, I know that I don't think that I'm ever going to forget seeing his face in that room. I don't think that I'm ever going to forget what it looked like to see the bullets hit that target, this white and red target on this black chest. I don't think I'm ever going to forget what it looks like to see the blood spreading across the shirt. And I've covered crime in courts and criminal justice for many years, and I've talked to people who've committed crimes. I've like you, and I've talked to the family members of victims, and this is kind of the ultimate end result. And so I think it's important to not look away from it, but it doesn't make it any better. And for all the sanitizing of it they can do, I've seen autopsy pictures from a firing squad execution in Utah, actually, where the records were a little more accessible, and it's awful. I mean, it's you're shooting someone to death, and it absolutely destroys the body. And those pictures, you don't forget those either.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you talking with me, Ted. I know it's probably been kind of a crazy 24 hours, but thank you for taking the time.
Literally, that the craziness of that is so like just buck wild that literally like that people would want to advocate to save them, but then if they're criminals, then why would you want to keep them in a system where they're going to have life and they're going to potentially hurt or victimize other people? And if their crime was bad enough that it, you know, deserved corporal punishment, then, you know, you get what you get, And I mean, that's just real life, And I mean, it sucks. And I know that this guy, I mean, it kind of seems like it affected him pretty hard, which I think like I said, I think it would really affect really kind of anybody, anybody who's ever in a system where you've never seen anybody die before, which most people haven't, especially if you're from the United States. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a fair amount of people who have seen people die or seen a dead person or, that sort of a thing. But I mean, it's all different angles and stuff. So just something to think about. But if you guys would please like, subscribe, comment. Also, if you guys want to watch the video, Brian Eaton investigates. Um, Throw a like, throw a follow, throw a comment on his stuff. I appreciate you guys for watching. This has been another Willie P Reacts, and have a good night.